we are now live. So, Bridget, hi everybody. It is Rollie, and we are at Monday. We're Monday, so we're Monday Whispers Chat. I'm a little bit discombobulated because I just come back from Mattawa, where I was completely disconnected from everything, and so today has been like a really busy day of getting reconnected with all the gadgets that we are attached to. So I love going to Nature's Harmony because it is completely off the grid. And so when we drive to a certain point, I send out my final message out to my family and say, okay, I'm turning off soon. See ya. And then until I get back, there's like no connection. So
nice.
It is awesome. I love it. So we have one eyeball that has joined us. So please let us know who you are. Let us know that you're on. So my name is Rollie Allaire. Gigado Migwen Kwe is my spirit name, which means tucking feather woman. And Bridging the Gap Wellness is all about being able to create wellness and wholeness in people's lives, and by helping them find balance. And so every week during Monday Whispers Chat, I interview and feature an amazing and inspiring woman. And today we have Anja. So Anja is a yoga teacher, a parenting coach, and she supports parents with the overwhelm that comes with parenting consciously. And so is there anything else about yourself, Anja, that you want to be able to share? Or
no, that's great. That's kind of, I'm a mom too. I don't know if I want that in my business repertoire, but yeah.
That's always helpful to be able to understand
all of that.
Yeah, so being a parent sometimes is very helpful. I know that that I've worked with different families that over the years that say, oh yeah, well, this social worker came into my life and just straight out of school, never had a kid in their life and telling me what to do with my kid. And they do actually. There are some things that are actually really helpful. So for those who are starting out, but it does help. It helps us to be able to understand a little bit more of where people are coming from. So can you tell me a little bit about what does it mean to parent consciously?
Absolutely. I think that word gets thrown around a lot, and people think it's the same as being a mindful parent, and it has some qualities, very similar qualities in there. But a conscious parent is one who's really, and it was a journey for me to even get there, to even for myself. But the idea being that you are your children, as your children are being raised, they're raising you. So we're kind of raising together. So the child is part of the whole group. Before we had top-down parenting, I'm the mom, I'm the dad, you do as I say. And conscious parenting kind of equals it all out, as that we're all in as a team. And for many of us, the struggles we have in parenting are really because we need to look at ourselves. And we don't always want to do that, right? I would rather someone just tell me, here, do this and this will happen, right? But It really is a beautiful way if we're raising the next generation, when we're more consciously parenting, having more awareness of why we're responding in a particular way. And a big part of conscious parenting, which touches totally the yoga side as well, is accepting our child as they are, as is. That the child does not need fixing. The child does not need teaching, like with this firm hand. The child does not need to be, I'm the parent and I need to figure out how you're going to live your life. Accepting them as is a beautiful way that conscious parenting really helps everybody be raised up together.
And that's really nice to like you said, is being able to be raised together is really helpful, because there are so many different parenting books out there and so many different parenting programs out there, and this is a different technique that is different than what a lot of the books or a lot of the information that is actually out there and sharing. So
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, we do have a couple of eyeballs on. So let us know that you're here. For those of you who are catching the replay, hashtag replay. I have sent out a few invites to some friends, and so hopefully people will be joining us, and I've shared it into our group. But if you guys are catching the replay, because I don't know about where everybody else is, but we have a very amazingly beautiful day today for the first time in, I'm sure that it's been like almost 2 weeks. But so I don't know how many people are coming to hang out at a computer right now from our neck of the woods. So like I said, I'm not sure where weather is at with everyone else, but like definitely we'd love to be able to have you guys join us. And my fingers are frozen, so I'm trying to warm up my fingers.
And I'm like, whew, having a hot flash.
Yeah, I'm trying to warm up my fingers because we've had the air conditioning on, and so like to keep able to keep everybody else cool, and I've been walking around with a sweater and my fingers are froze. So as I'm doing this, it's not a nervous tick.
It's heat generated.
So I'm trying to generate some heat into my fingers, and I just realized that I was doing it as I'm watching myself on the screen. I'm like, I should probably stop doing that, or at least let people know what am I doing. So tell me a little bit more about, so first of all, how many kids do you have?
I have two, an 18-year-old now and a 21-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you're actually wanting to talk about is like, so the topic was how yoga changed the way that I parented. So how does yoga kind of fit into that conscious parenting consciously?
Yeah, tons and tons. It fits in really, really big, but I wouldn't have known it at the time. Like, it's again one of those sort of as you evolve.
Yeah.
And I started. I should have actually had my years of water, but I started yoga. I'm thinking like, so my son's 21 before I had him, and on and off, not sort of so serious. And then once I had both of them, two children, a son and a daughter, a friend of mine was starting to teach yoga, and I thought, oh, okay. I just really thought, oh, it would be a good stretch, right? And I think some of us sort of think that that's it. And then I did yoga for many years when my kids were small, and then since certified as a yoga teacher. And when I certified as a yoga teacher, I understood a lot more of the yoga philosophy side of things, which is kind of not so always taught within a class setting, which you're familiar with the chakras, but also it's not all just about the poses. It's actually more of an internal spiritual journey, as it was for me. There's different styles. Yeah. And so what I noticed with my yoga practice as I started, same as with my children, you start to learn more about yourself. So in stillness, which was a killer for me to sit still, it was like agony, because I didn't want to be with myself. No other reason, right? Your mind goes to certain places. When we were told to breathe, it was like, well, I breathe in my shoulders. I didn't know there were no lungs in my shoulders. And so it was sort of, as I evolved as a parent, I also was evolving on my mat and realizing, I think the big aha moment for me at the beginning there was really realizing how I had forgotten myself. I didn't actually know who I was anymore. I had to so enmesh myself as a parent. I was a trained British nanny, so I had been a nanny for years. And then I had my children, and I really felt like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. This is where I'm supposed to be. And Anja was lost in that. And so yoga helped me find myself again, right? Does that make sense? So I sort of started to soften into just being me. I started to notice how much tension I was holding in my body from my whole life. I know you deal with trauma, but just even in life in general, right? Yeah. There's things that go on, and it all, in my idea, it all gets stored in the body. From as simple as holding your jaw really tight, right? Or when you're driving, you're holding really stiff, and you don't actually need to be, right? Yeah. So body awareness. And yoga made me kinder, just because I sort of was able to be kinder to myself. And then I'm going to obviously be a bit kinder to people around me. I mean, it's not a quick fix. It wasn't like, I've done my mat, now I'm just loving the world. But it sort of was, I think the philosophy side, there's yamas and niyamas, there's the poses, obviously, the chakras, there's a whole bunch of different things that add into or what yoga is, and then translate over to parenting.
Yep. And that makes a huge difference. Like that makes a lot of sense, right? So, like you said, like we actually store so much in our body, and we've heard a lot of that over the years of like that whole body wisdom and being able to connect with our body, and like you said, like that whole connection of being able to have our jaw tightened, right? So, when my kids were little, I was just um, and normal stressed, right? So like, but stressed about like, I have to get the kids ready for school. They're in activities. I have to get ready for work. One of the kids gets sick. I have to deal with trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to manage that. And so like all those different things. And so, and I don't remember what setting that we were in, but there was something that was going on with my youngest son, and I had said something to him, and through the conversation of whatever it was that we were doing, he said, "But mommy, I'm always afraid that you're going to punch me." And I'm like, "Why am I going to punch you? Like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, have I ever punched you before?" And he's like, "No, but you always walk around, like when we're talking and things are stressful, your hands are in a fist." And I'm like, oh, so my whole body would get tight and my hands would go into a fist. And so they would be beside my body. And to him, it would be from a little kid's perspective as, oh, my mom's going to punch me. She's so mad she's going to punch me. And I'm like, oh. So then when I would get angry or frustrated about things, whether it was to the kids or to anybody else, I purposely, and even now to this day, I become conscious. Like, so if I can feel my body tightening from whatever it is that's causing me stress, then I always pay attention to where my hands, what's going on with my hands. And then I automatically like make sure that I kind of shake them open.
Right.
Right. So like it makes sense in terms of that body. Like, what does your tightness in your body look like? Right. So not everybody walks around getting frustrated and has their hands in a fist. But like that was one of my tall tales that I was getting frustrated, and not that I walked around punching people, because I don't think I ever punched people, but not that I recall anyway. But it was just my body would just get tight, and that was one of the things that I was able to kind of keep to myself, kind of thing. That was that tight, right?
So, and that's your own awakening from an observation from somebody who you love, who loves you. Like, it's all done in a manner that we can accept it to some degree, right? But it's got to go somewhere, right? And so, you know, it's stored there. And even like you say, just stresses of everyday life, you know, and then us trying to, you know, we want what's best for our children. So if we think in the parenting world, we want what's best for the children. And then, you know, how do we respond? And I can go from 0 to 50 super fast, right? And my kids would probably be like, oh, everything's fine. And then, whoa, what's going on, right? And so my own goes back to my own self-care, right? Goes back to how am I feeling about myself? And on my mat, I got to replenish. And I think as many moms, there's no replenishing. You're always working on a empty, you know, and so definitely it's in there. From tight fist to tight jaw to sort of even feeling flexible or not feeling flexible.
Yeah.
Right? And when I started yoga, oh my goodness, I mean, I could not see my toes, let alone touch them, you know, and even in the class, every time they told me to raise my arms, I was like, oh my God. This is hard work. I thought this was going to be easy. I just want to lie here and roll my shoulders and take a nap.
Well, isn't yoga supposed to be relaxing? I don't get it, right? So, and and you're right. It is that really hard work. So, hi, Helen. How are you? And so it is that hard work. And it's, how do we actually connect with our bodies? And yoga is a really great place to be able to do that. And like you said, it's not just let's go lay down on the yoga mat and have a nap. It really is. Shavasana at the end of a class is amazing. But typically your instructor will actually walk you through those things, right? So
absolutely. And you know, I wasn't aware of the breath. As simple as that. I just thought we just breathe. And when I was studying yoga and when I was taking yoga classes, it was amazing to me what a difference that made in the way I feel, in the way I present my energy, in having tools to calm myself when I'm ready to explode, having tools to kind of sort of release and let go when I want to control everybody and everything, right? That breath is vital, yet we rarely talk about breath. It just happens, right? It's, and we all know when you see a little child breathe, it's right in the belly, it's just as relaxed, right? And as we get older, I know for me, it took me a long time to be able to bring my breath anywhere but in my upper chest.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to get it there. Or if I got it there, it then needs to be afterwards. Like I had to take a gulp, of air. But it's oxygen. We need that for some reason.
And like you said, everybody breathes from that upper part of the chest. And so whether it's through yoga or through any other kind of meditation, when you actually start to bring your awareness to your breath and start to notice where you're actually breathing from, it makes a huge difference. And so it is, so I have a friend who actually teaches yoga, and her focus is yoga for anxiety. And because anxiety is another one of those things that when we start to get anxious, we start to hold our breath. And when we get afraid, we hold our breath. Like those are just, for whatever reason, those are our responses. But yet the most important thing for us to be doing is breathing. And yoga really does teach a lot of that through a lot of different kinds of breath, depending on what kind of yoga that you're doing, what your instructor is trying to get you to do, moving into the positions, and that kind of thing. So
yeah, I taught for many years, probably about 6-7 years. I taught out of a hospital in an anxiety clinic for children who'd been clinically diagnosed with anxiety. And so we just had like a 30-minute yoga part, and then they would be with the social workers to work on other areas.
Yeah.
And it was so incredible that practically all the kids, that after they'd had yoga, the main takeaway was the various breath work. They felt that was something they could implement right away in every day. It's not so obvious. You don't have to do big, just sort of different techniques with your fingers or your nose or breath. And that was what made them feel different. If they needed a bit more confidence, if they started to feel anxiety coming, where they could sort of, we're in our heads, right? With all of that, we're not in our body. It's fascinating.
And it is, and kids tend to be in their heads, right? So we were actually talking with I was talking with somebody not that long ago, somebody last week, I think. And when we're dealing with little kids, they're in their head. They're not in their heads. They're in their bodies, and they're feeling things, and they're experiencing things. And but we teach them how to be able to like confine to a classroom, how to be able to like, okay, well, you need to sit this way, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And so it makes it really difficult when kids are supposed to be active, and they're supposed to have that interaction. And another friend of mine teaches yoga as well, and she teaches kids how to be able to move in their body, to be able to bring that relaxation in. And the kids that have so when she teaches in these schools, that's one of the things that that she gets them to do, is automatically start to focus on that breathing, and just to kind of bring that calm in. Because if you take 3 deep breaths, and intentionally take 3 deep breaths, then it just automatically calms you, right? With nothing else, doing or thinking.
Energy in the classroom. Yeah.
Right. So it makes all the difference. So now, how did you, so obviously you started doing yoga when your kids were little, but like, so how did you kind of go with, from that whole parenting perspective of how it changed the way that you parented?
Right. Well, I think what it was the idea of, am I still here? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's the idea that it was getting to know myself better happened on the mat, right?
Yeah.
And then also when I took the teacher training, learning so much more about what yoga was, that it isn't just the pose, right? That it wasn't a standing on your head and looking glamorous. True yoga, as far as I'm concerned, the one I studied was Kripalu yoga.
Was what kind?
Kripalu yoga. It's a form of hatha. Hatha's kind of everything. So this one, it's not as well known. It's in the States. It started in the States. It's in Massachusetts, but it's a very much about moving meditation poses and with your breath, right? There's a lot more choices about what you want to do. You want to feel who you are on your mat, as opposed to stand in a warrior pose and have it all done and anatomically correct and you hold kind of idea, right?
Yeah.
And so when there's these in getting into more of the yoga, there was the idea, there's Patanjali, who was kind of like the father of yoga, had these 8 limbs, and we were learning about the yamas and niyamas there, and they're sort of, you could kind of, it's a moral code, a way of living, kind of like 10 commandment ideas, just in a different format. And that was such an aha moment to me. So one of them is called asteya, right? And that's considered non-stealing. So it's a way of living, right? If you want to live righteous, if you want to be a good person, I guess there's different things. And so when you first learn that, you think, oh, non-steal. I'm not a stealer. I don't steal, right? I'm going. Well, I did actually. When I was about 6, I remember stealing a candy. So I will admit to that now. A sweet at the sweet shop that my mum wouldn't buy me. So I did steal. But as an adult, I don't think I'm a stealer. But then we realize, as we look into it, and then I'm going to relate it to parenting, is how often do we steal the conversation from our children? How often do we steal their thoughts? We don't let them have their thoughts. We tell them what to think, right? How often do we steal time away, or they're sharing something and we want to jump in with advice? Kind of stealing, right?
Yeah.
Or if we want to, we limit the experiences they get, or we are controlling so much of their life. We're stealing from them having their own thoughts, having their own choices that they can have. We're not talking about wild people, right? We're talking still in this world. But sorry, my thing popped out. But if we look at that as, do you want to be non-stealing from them? Do you want to let them figure things out sometimes? Do we want to let them feel good about asking for help if they need it, rather than us jumping in and wanting to give it to them?
Yeah.
Right? Like if your child's gone to pour a glass of milk, or wants is doing some homework, and we so often, I've done it too, jump in, let me help you, let me do it, let me say right?
Yeah.
That's stealing. That's another format of stealing. So it's those kind of things that really sort of stuck out to me as being like, wow, gosh, does that ever relate, to you're not consciously doing that, but it all relates to conscious parenting, because once you have that awareness, you let them talk without them talking, and you're waiting to jump in with your suggestions, or or you could and you should, or don't do that, or whatever. You're just able to hold space for them. And that's vital. That's so important as far as I'm concerned.
And as a parent, sometimes that is really difficult, right? So, so I know that, and I'm not saying that I'm never guilty of it, but we have a young girl that comes and hangs out with us once a month. And she's my niece's friend's daughter, and we love her to pieces, and we enjoy having that time with her. But one of the things that I noticed that my husband does often is that she'll start talking, and she'll have these things that she wants to be able to share, and he finishes her sentences. And like I said, I'm not saying that I never do it. He's never intervened. So if I'm doing it, I'm doing it very unconsciously, where I have to remind him, it's like, no, let her finish. Let her finish. Wow. Right. Yeah. So, and it's just, and because he's like really excited, or she's struggling with her words, and it's like, no, just let her finish. And I see that with my dad a lot as well, right? So my dad has some memory issues, and for the most part, I know that I don't do it, because I do that very consciously, not to fill in his sentences when we go to a medical appointment or something like that. But I notice that other family members, when he starts to stutter and starts to struggle with his words, is that they actually put the words in his mouth for him. And it's like, unless he's unless he's really, really struggling, or unless he's really having that difficulty, I often say, like, no, just let him finish. Let him, because we need to allow them to be able to go through that. And for him, that's part of the recovery from the strokes and the medicine that he's actually on, right? So,
and I think we all do it out of love, right?
Yeah.
Or out of care. We think we're being kind.
Yeah.
But we're taking from somebody. There's a taking.
Yeah.
Right? There's a taking in. A big awareness for me with if I'm with my friends, and they're talking, and I'm really listening. I like to put it in my good favor. Maybe it happens the other way around. And then when it's sort of my turn to say something, suddenly the phone's being picked up or answered, right? I do that even with my kids. I'm very guilty of that too, right? You sort of go, oh yeah,
Yeah,
you know, if we think of it as stealing, it just gives it a different perspective,
it does.
right? It takes you sort of go, wow, I know, no, I want everyone to have, you know, I want to feel that people feel heard, but when they're with me, I want to be a good friend, a good partner, right? So that was a big change. There's many of them. There's 5 of each, 5 yamas, 5 niyamas, but that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, and it's easy for us to do, right? So especially as a parent, when we like we've got a long list of things as a parent that we need to be doing. So whether we are working parents or whether we're stay-at-home parents, we have they're going to their activities, and life is just really busy. And so it's easy for us to be able to just like, let me just tie your shoes, right?
Yeah.
So my younger son, he didn't allow us to tie his shoes, and because he needed to tie them in exactly the exact way, and there's like lots of things that like would drive us crazy. And probably, I think it was about 2 months ago that my husband said, you know, going anywhere with him was torture, because it was like we couldn't just leave, and I couldn't just jump in to help him get it done so that we could just leave. We really had to just wait until it was done, and wait till like he had like every little knot, and if it wasn't done properly, like would start off with his laces would be exactly, and if they weren't, then he would need to adjust his laces, and then if they were the exact same right height, then he would actually tie his laces. And then the rabbit ears needed to be the exact same size, right? So,
Yeah.
and I just knew that it was like, just give him more time to get ready. So it's like, okay, we're going to be getting ready. I need you to be able to give him more time. And my husband is a procrastinator. I love him to death, but he's a procrastinator. And that is just who his nature is. And so he never allowed for that extra time because he waited till the last minute to get anybody moving. So so then it was like being able to allow him to be able to do those things, and it's just those reminders, and like it's just little things, but those little things allow them to be able to grow and expand it. It doesn't take him that long to tie his shoes anymore, right? So they do grow. They do grow.
It's hard, like you say, sometimes it doesn't work out in their favor. You know, things have to happen. But I think it is always a good one to remember. And actually, yoga definitely taught me that too, in terms of let's look at the big picture. And conscious parenting is big about that. Like, what's the ultimate goal here, right? And I think when we're able to see that, and we can't when we're busy and we're hurrying and, oh my gosh, we got this and that to do, those times we maybe can't. But there's enough times in between where we can pause. I mean, that was the biggest learning for me, was just take a pause before I'm ready to shout, before I'm ready to enter a room, before I'm ready to, grab everybody from school. Take a pause, take a breath, right? And then approach from that place. It can make a big difference. Big difference when we,
Yeah, and it does. Right. So, and there are some things that we avoid, right? So you've got the two ends of the spectrum, but like when we can actually stop and think about like, what is it that we need? What do we need to do to be able to kind of move forward? And so I had a session with somebody that was very recently, that one of the things that we actually had talked about was, so this person experiences anxiety, really high anxiety. And so, and when they have to do planning, well, then that just creates more anxiety because things didn't go exactly the way that it happened, that they want to happen. But when we actually set out what it is that we want to know, right? So like in this particular case, she needed to figure out how she was actually going to be able to move forward in a decision that she needed to make. But then having to think about the anxiety, to think about the plan was creating a lot of anxiety. But it's like, if you just stop right? So just stop and only look at this one part. How do you want this part to look like? And obviously life happens. So when we plan something out, it doesn't always go exactly the way as planned. But if you have something that's planned out and you have a plan A and a plan B, then it allows you to be able to have. But if you don't take that pause to be able to stop and think about what is it that I want, then your decisions are being influenced by your emotions and or by other people for different reasons, right? So either because they're triggering an emotion out of you, or it's like it's easier to keep the peace, so you just kind of appease whatever it is that is going on, or you react explosively because like that is, so like there's different ways of being able to respond with it, but like that just staying quiet, taking those few minutes to be able to think about what is it that I need, and like you said, getting to know yourself. And as parents, oftentimes we hear, and I know because you work with parents as well, so oftentimes we hear these parents that say, oh, well, my kids are my world. And they are a priority and they are things that we're supposed to be doing. But when they become your world, that's where you lose sight of who you are. And then when the kids leave and then you have that empty nest syndrome, then it's kind of like, now what am I supposed to do? Now who am I supposed to be? They are gone. Like I've been only a parent for the last 18 to 23 years, and now everybody's gone. And depending on how many kids that you have and how many interventions that you have, right? So could be a little longer, could be a little less, but it's like, okay, now how do I figure out who I am? And so
and also when you look at it too, what a burden we're putting on our kids if we're saying you're my world.
Yeah.
So you need to make me happy. You need to fulfill my expectations. You need to be the one that creates that I feel I have something going on in my life. You need to love me so I don't have to love myself, right? The switch on that is, when we look at it in another way, that you're saying, wow, that's the switch that's got to start happening. But like we know even as that with partners, they cannot be everything.
No. And we need to be the one that actually looks after ourselves. And as women, typically, there's a lot of, we want to nurture others, right? So oftentimes we forget that we need to be caring for ourselves. And because we're so busy trying to make sure that everybody else is okay around us, that we often forget about watching, being able to care for ourselves and seeing how that happens. And so it makes a huge difference in terms of, and I love how you actually are able to bring that, bring yoga into that. Hi, Lillian. And so it's, yeah, I don't even know. Yeah. So it makes, like, yeah, I love how you bring that together in terms of being able to help, with the parents. So, so now,
it's actually interesting, Rollie. It's actually interesting because at the beginning, I didn't realize how much I was bringing yoga into my sessions. I didn't realize how much when a parent books has a session with me, and then I give them an inspired action plan afterwards to kind of go through how much was actually yoga, from meditation, from being mindful, from poses, like even simple poses we call mountain pose, which is kind of looks like you're just standing there. What a difference that can make if you're fully present there.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting side that I suddenly was like, holy smokes, I'm doing it anyway. I need to call myself out on that and say, no, this is actually a big part of it.
Yeah. And I like the point that you just made about mountain pose, right? So mountain pose really is that standing straight, right? So hi, Kira. And it's like that standing straight and just being present in your whole body and making sure that your body is weighted. And most people say, oh, mountain pose, okay, I can do that, I can stand still. But when you're actually doing it consciously and feeling, where is it that you're shifting? Are you like shifted over to one side more? Is there some reason why? Like there's just so many things of being able to create that body awareness in even something as simple as mountain pose.
Yeah, and we tend to do it on our mat. right? So we can do it there because it's part of the class. And I'm saying, wow, you know what? Yoga off the mat is actually where the juice happens. That's where the good stuff happens, right? You on your own, really, you know, you're about to make dinner and everybody needs you and you're just like going crazy. You know, what if you just can find your mountain, find your breath, and then continue from there? It's a mindset switch, right? It's really something that you're already doing, but your physical body ground down. Mountains aren't like, oh, hello, right? They're really like, here I am. Yeah, changes everything.
It does, and I love how you actually bring that together. So now you talk about when you're dealing with parents off the mat. So obviously you're not necessarily teaching them yoga. So what exactly is it that you're doing with them?
Okay, so generally parents are coming to me with an issue. So something that's going on from my child is hitting and biting, from nobody's listening to me. I'm feeling really disconnected from my kids, you know, or home's not very happy right now. There's a lot of shouting. So it's usually based on an issue. And conscious parenting is really relating to how it is with you, right?
Yep.
So we sort of go, how does that actually make you feel? So when your son's say not tying his shoelaces as quickly as we would like, we got somewhere to, how does that make you feel? And let's go start there, right?
Yep.
And then working around, so the breath will come in a lot for me. Poses will come in a lot, like in terms of this inspired action plan. So once we know that, let me think of an example for you. So, okay, so there was one mum who had quite a few children and she was feeling really like it's just gone nuts at home. Everybody's disconnected and all I'm doing is yelling, trying to get people to do what I ask, right?
Yeah.
So usually the first question is, okay, what are you doing for yourself lately? Self-care, right? And it's not necessarily massage or whatever. Maybe it's you know, deeper than that. Maybe you really miss connecting with your girlfriends and having a good giggle, you know. Maybe you know, where in your life are you feeling a little out of control, right? So we start with that. And then in the inspired action plan would also be cases. So with this lady with lots of children, we discussed a little more about her energy. So before she comes home, some stuff she can do in the car before she picks up her son from daycare, before she actually walks in the door, because she says she tends to walk in the door already like a whirlwind and start shouting orders, right? And we all know, okay, so how does that look? How does that feel? How does that feel if you're the child? If your spouse or partner came in and started saying, right, come on, clear this up, we're doing this, like how are people going to respond, right?
Yeah.
And so I offer also like a mindfulness practice that they can do, maybe first thing in the morning, something in the car, a visualization, there's yoga nidra. Like, where do we need to fill your tank? And then the conscious part is, let's have a family meeting. Her kids are bigger. Let's discuss this. Look, this isn't working. How can we make this different? Or how can we improve this? And our kids are so incredibly wise. They have so many answers that we don't have to. No, actually, that was a big part for me with my kids, that I suddenly realized, you know what? I don't actually have to have the answers. What a weight lifted off your shoulders, because we think we do, right? It's all down to us to get the house to run nicely. It's all down with a spouse, without like, but you know, this whole idea that we have to. And then when you bring the children in, when you're working as a team, even little people, you know, your 3-4-year-olds, you can sort of say, okay, guys, how are we going to get out of the house easier? What do we all need? I need us all to be out of the house at 8:30. What is it you need to do? What is it? And you bring them in, and then there's their own ownership. There's their own idea of like, oh, I'm part of this. My voice matters.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the steps that I have, sort of those steps that they can go into afterwards. As a trained British nanny, I was a nanny in England, Switzerland, and in Canada. That's how I came here. So I have tons and tons of experience of working with different children, different ages, that sort of thing. And so that's how it sort of all comes in terms of usually poses, breath work, mindfulness, and meditation to me is key, really, really key. And I have great ways to make it that people are not going, oh, because I actually didn't like meditation. I thought, what a waste of time. I just sit here, like, how long do I have to sit, you know? And now I realize how important. I didn't have it when my kids were small. I didn't know of it. I was totally against it. But I realize now, wow, it's actually bigger than that. It's just slowing everything down for a second, and then go about your day.
And it does, it makes all that difference, right? So it just helps you to be able to kind of just, and goes back to your title, right? So being able to parent consciously. And so I love how you actually incorporate that with being able to identify what the issues are, right? So like you said, with that one parent being able to come in and doing the breath work before she even walks through the door, so that she's not coming in as that cyclone or that whirlwind or that tornado, right? So it just allows that and just calm.
Well, we often joke or working with kids that they're not great at transitioning, right? We want them to transition fast. Well, what about us? And I'm not a quick thinker. Like when my kids would come with all the demands as I walked in the door, it'd be like somebody was like throwing things at me,
Yeah.
I come from work, I've come in from a busy day, my head's on the next thing. Okay, got to make dinner, got to take somebody somewhere. Like no wonder all the energies collide, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to come in and say, you know what, I'm going to make a cup of tea, I'm going to get changed, and then I'm all yours, right? You can ask for that. You can kind of say, and kids, great. That's great learning for them, but they also can do that, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the things that with my kids, when they were little, it would be the one rule was like, if they were just coming at me with a whole bunch of questions and a whole bunch of things, it would be, you need to let me think about it. And if they come back, because it was usually demands of like, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to do this, I want to do that. And so it would be like, you know what, like if you keep asking me, then the answer is automatically no. So like if you're going to give me the time to be able to think about it, then I have the opportunity to be able to think about it. But if you just keep coming at me with more questions and more requests or more begging, then it's like the answer is no. You've just made my decision for me. I'm finished. Right. So that was one of the strategies that I would actually use with some of my families that I would work with, is just, you know what, there's nothing wrong with saying no. Right. So when we would have my nieces or nephews or other people's kids around, and they would ask a question and then they would ask again, after I'd already said, let me think about it, my kids would pipe up right away and say, if you ask her again, the answer is going to be no. And like, you don't want that to happen. So just sit quiet and let her think about it. And so, because otherwise it really was, because it was like, hey, you know what, this is too much. This is too much pressure for me. And I just need to, if I need to think about it, and because if it's something that is, not a big deal, then it's like, yeah, the answer is yes, go ahead, do it, or have it, or whatever it is that's going on. But if it was something that I needed to think about, it was like, no, I need you to just kind of sit back and let me have that opportunity to be able to weigh those pros and cons, because I needed that time to be able to think sometimes, depending, especially like I worked with families, like I worked with people and their mental health and or addictions. And so like I spent the day with people that had issues. And so when my day was ending, I sometimes needed to just kind of, like you said, let me come in, have my tea, let me come in and figure out what it is that I'm doing. And so that I can actually have that time to just kind of be quiet and just be still and be in this moment.
Absolutely. And our kids are super smart. They know, like, oh, mom's a bit weak right now. Let me get in there. If I say it quick, she won't have time to, and then I can go to my friends and I can go here or I can do that, right? They know.
Yeah. So I love how you actually are able to help families be able to slow things down, because we do live in a lifetime where, and even when my kids were little and when your kids were little, because now we've got older kids, right? Yeah. So we're about to have their own kids in the next few years. But it's like life was busy, right? So life was really busy and it hasn't slowed down. I think it's actually sped up. Right. So like we've got all these, and now we've got technology, and like there's no, like when my kids were little, the idea of having a cell phone meant that you actually had to carry a bag phone around. Like, so like they, it's like we didn't go around buying bag phones to be able to cart around. And like, I know that I had them for work. And so they would be in the car. They were actually called car phones, right? Yeah. But then things evolved. And then when my kids started being more social and being out, well, then we had cell phones, so that way there they could actually text me, and the only people that they were able to text was just me and their dad and that kind of thing. And so but now it's like kids at a very young age are having cell phones so that they have that connection. They're on social media regardless of the fact that they may not necessarily be the right age. And so like you've got all these things that are actually influencing how our families are and what it is that's going on. And there's so many activities and keeping them busy and getting active, and which getting active is really great. Like that's certainly not something that I want to say that we need to stop, but it's still those different things, right? So like when my kids were little, it was they walked around with their books all the time. Like I had my oldest one where I actually had to go over, and I still laugh about the poor little old lady in the park, because I actually would take his book away and I looked at him and I said, if I see you reading again, you're going to be grounded. And this poor lady comes up to me, like this poor little old lady comes up and says, I don't want to intervene, but like it's really important that he reads. And I'm like, I know. And this kid reads all the time, like morning, noon, and night. Like he does not stop. I need him more at the park. I need him to go play. I really need him to be active. That is the reason why we're here. Whereas like now kids are on their cell phones, right? So like it's and not to say that one's better than the other, but well, actually reading is definitely better than being on your cell phone. But I mean, in terms of that inactivity is so like it's that importance of being able to do those kinds of things, right? So but yeah, so being able
and
to
I think boundaries, similar to what you're saying, or adding on to that, how I work quite a bit with people with their boundaries, because they think there's a sort of belief out there that if you're conscious parenting, it means that the kids are now in charge, right? Yeah. And it's certainly not that. It's as a family decision. And for a lot of us, myself included, my boundaries were pretty wishy-washy, right? I would have the boundary, I think, oh no, this is my kids, especially coming from being quite a strict British nanny. And then I have my own. And I used to think when I was a nanny, oh, these parents, why don't they just stick to these rules? And then there's mine, you know, oh, what do you want to eat? Oh, you don't like this? How about this? How about this? You know, like the total opposite. So working on sort of certain boundaries that are just part of our family life. These are no-go areas, or these are areas that we get to discuss again, but this is, you know, how it's going to be. Yeah. With phones, we have to do that with phones, you know, we have to do that with sort of certain things, like, you know, we can't just leave our children to their willy-nilly eating what they want and lying around all the time and on a computer game, right? Yeah. So for most children, they don't actually want that life either. They want connection. They want to be part of something, right? It's often a tune out, you know. And I noticed even for myself in the way we parent, come with so many fears, so many of our own fears, so many stories. Yeah. You know, we're not in this present moment, because when we're in the present moment, we can really relate to our children. So we can relate to what is it they need. We're able to talk about what it is they need. We can share our own stories. You know what I really, you know, I'm feeling like we're doing a lot of sitting around right now. Come on, let's think of some activities that we can do as a family. Go swimming, ride a bike, go for a walk, get a dog, you know, different things. But as a group thing, kids want in. They want to be part of a social thing. They don't want to be, you know, in another, like alone while the rest of the family is doing things.
Yeah. And it really does make a huge difference. And so I don't know how consciously parenting that I was doing, but I think that I was actually, especially when my kids were starting to get older, and being able to get them involved in helping them make decisions and that kind of thing. And so I think I did a good job as a parent, and we all do. We do as good of a job as we are where we're at. And but when so one of the conversations that I was having not that long ago with my son's girlfriend was that he was talking about some different things, like, well, yeah, my mom got us to do this, and she would make us make decisions, and she would make us do all these things, and we would have to, like, if we decided we were going to do an activity, then we needed to follow through on that activity, and like all this kind of stuff, and he had like all these different examples, and she looked at him and said, wow, you had a really great childhood, didn't you? Like, seriously, she wasn't being sarcastic. It was like, wow, that was like really awesome that you were able to do all these things and participate in all these things. And you had those things. So like if they had, so they had their gaming systems, but they had to help pay for them. And like, imagine they actually had to try and earn money to be able to have the things that they wanted, right? And so like those things were like really, really important. Whereas other parents would say, no, you can't have it at all. Like our rule was always, you come up with half, we'll come up with half. Right. And so like, and that was our family choice. And that was, we were able to do that. That's not always the case for all families. And that doesn't work for all families, but it did for us. But it's that those different ways of being able to try and make things differently and having them, like you said, engaging, right? So engaging them and being able to make decisions. Like, so my kids are able to make some really great decisions, and I'm very happy for that. And I know that it has to do with the fact that I allowed them to be able to make those choices when they were little that were not hugely important. Like there's obviously safety things that if it was a safety thing, there was no choice. It wasn't an option. There was no discussion about it. But if it was things that they wanted to be able to do that was safe, then they were allowed to be able to be part of that, that thing. And like you said, getting them ready for school in the morning, right? So like I said, I had this kid that actually needed to tie his shoes that would take like 20 minutes to be able to tie his shoes. And so we sat down and said, okay, well, here are all the things that need to be done before we leave in the morning. We have to leave at this time. What is it that we're going to do? And we actually made a checklist that he would actually every day put stickers on each day, and then he would take them off in the morning so that it was at bedtime so that he could start again. But his checklist had like, what time was it that his alarm needed to get up so that he can get up in the morning? How long was it that he needed to brush his teeth? How long was it that he needed to have breakfast and get his shoes on and get dressed and all those other things? And he was the one that actually came up with the schedule that allowed him to be able to figure out, is this working? What is it that's not happening? And so we would try it for a week or two and then come back to it. And that was because it was driving me insane trying to get this kid ready, because we just needed to get to work. Like we needed to be able to leave, and I need him to go to school and I need to go to work. And so we need to be out the door by this time. So how are we going to do that? How can we make it so that this is going to work for you? And so he helped come up with times, and like I said, it took a few weeks because it was like, okay, let's try it for a couple of weeks and see where things go. And we would then have to adjust. It's like, okay, no, I need a little bit longer to be able to do that. And he was tracking his time. Like, you know what? Okay, it took me this long to be able to get ready in the morning. It took me this long to have my breakfast in the morning. And so then we were able to adjust the schedule the way that it actually worked. And he had that responsibility of ticking it off and figuring out, oh, what did I miss today? Right. So, but the rule was still, you need to be out the door. We need to be out the door by this certain time because I still need to get to work. Right. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so it is that challenge. And people would say, oh, really? You're getting him to decide? No, I'm getting to see him to see what it is that works for him. I don't need 20 minutes to tie my shoes.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it doesn't take me 20 minutes to tie my shoes, but he does. So like that kind of thing. Like we have different people. Hey, Jen, we have different people who try to get their kids to conform. And we do need to have that conformity. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
But we do still, so they still need to be able to function in society, but at the same time, we still need them to be able to do those, be able to make some of those decisions for them, right? And I know that I've been saying this a lot in the last few weeks, is like, I can't believe we've been talking for an hour.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness.
So the last few people that I've been talking to, it's been like, oh wow, like just a huge whirlwind of time that we've actually just gone through. So so anybody that wants to be able to connect with Anja, I've got her links in the description.
Beautiful.
And so the other question that I have, is there anything that you have going on that you want to be able to share with people? Or is it just your connections? Like, how is it that you are, what you need?
Yeah, I think it's if people would like to reach out I have the SOS calls, Save Our Sanity calls, which are my most popular, sort of a one-off, let's just work with something. I am actually writing, I'm in editing stage of my book. I've never written a book before, but to do with how yoga changed the way I parented. There's like some super resources in there and great ways, my story based on how this has evolved. And if you're local to the Toronto area, I have in September, I've just booked, kind of in the process of booking, I think I got to sign it back, another Mother's Day off, which I've done before, which is a beautiful way where we just take the day, we do dream building, we do yoga, we do meditation, we do dance, and really sort of come back to ourselves. So, but they can follow, if they follow me on Instagram or my Facebook page, my business Facebook page, all that stuff will be on there.
Okay, awesome. And so, and both of those are on the description link. But what I did was I actually did type up so that if somebody's like, oh, what was that thing called again? So SOS calls, Save Our Sanity calls. I love that. That is so beautiful.
I know, it's sort of just evolved to be called that, where people go, actually, some people would just email me and go, help, SOS.
Which is beautiful. So I did put that in the comments so that people can actually go back and find it. And but yeah, and I actually pinned it to the top of the conversation so that people can,
you're very technical. I've got nothing. All I'm doing is
and I don't even know. I don't know if you can do that all the time, but it was like, oh, it says pin comment, and I'm like, okay, let's pin the comment. So you're my first. I'm
the first pin.
So I do that in my Facebook groups, but I've never done that on a live chat before. So it's kind of cool. But yeah, so anybody who wants to be able to connect with Anja, then definitely there is some great things. I love the way that you incorporate that in terms of those coaching with parents. And so thanks everybody for coming. And Anja, thanks again for joining us. And we will talk to everybody. And I always forget which keyboard that I'm supposed to actually move to. And so thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you guys next week.
Thank you, Rollie.
Bye for
now.
now.
Much for having me. Thank you.